Reality exists only where we create a focus. You and I are learning how to focus an energy through the way we feel about our world. It's not what we verbalize, it's not what we command, it's the way we feel the world in our heart. That focus is important because it leads to what is called the great spiritual mystery that says that there's a focus we create in consciousness that triggers a process inside of our bodies. It interacts with the forces of creation. It affects our physical world. This is the key. A focus we create in consciousness affects our bodies and our world. Observation creates reality. What we now know is the way we feel, our expectations about our world literally are rearranging the stuff our world is made of on subtle levels if it's a passing expectation. But if we can hold that focus and be very clear about where and how it happens, that is where the miracles happen. That is how you bring change into your world. I'm going to share some new science. We're going to have the opportunity to go back into Tibet to a different monastery and see different monks, different abbots. We're learning about a language that has no words. It's the nonverbal language of the human heart that has been referenced in a poetic sense for a very long time. But now our own science is telling us that the heart, your heart, from the moment you take your first breath in this world, your heart begins to commune. And I'm going to be really clear about this word. Do you know that the word prayer does not exist in the ancient Jewish, the ancient Christian, or any of the texts prior to 1700 years ago? There is no word prayer. The word prayer is an artifact of human interpretation, human intervention. When you go back into the original texts and you retranslate, whether we're talking about the Sumerian or the Aramaic or the original Hebrew, the word prayer does not exist. Do you know what word they use? It's a beautiful word. Commune. Doesn't it have a different feel than prayer? When we're praying to something or someone or a being or an entity, to me that feels very different than communing, having a communion with the forces of this world. So we're learning about this language that we speak. Every moment of every day, you're having a conversation with the stuff, the literal field of energy that holds this universe together. You're communing with that field right this minute. And the question is, do you know what you're saying? Well, the answer to that is in the world around you. It's in your checkbook. It's what your balance looks like. It's in your relationships, in your workplace, in your intimate relationships, your friends, your family. It's in the success of your heart's desire. All of those things are the field answering the communication and the conversation that you've been sharing for a lifetime. And from the perspective of the ancients, there really isn't a right, wrong, good, or bad. It's just about us recognizing that we're in this feedback loop. There's a feedback mechanism out there, and if we don't like what we're seeing, we're given the tools to change that, and that's really important right now. I asked for a show of hands in a room yesterday. There were about 600 people in the room, and almost everybody said, man, it feels like something big is happening. It is. And the experts are telling us that something big is happening. It's not our imagination. And the reason it's happening is because you and I are living this rare convergence of great cycles of time, unlike anything ever seen in 5,000 years of recorded human history. Now, our own scientists within the last couple of years have just begun to understand that where Earth and our solar system is located in an orbit around the center of our great Milky Way galaxy. It's called the Great Central Sun. I know you've heard of that before if you study ancient texts. Where we are in our journey around that source of energy at the center of the Milky Way determines in large part what happens on this planet. It determines things like climate change, weather patterns, whether or not the sea levels are high or low, whether or not the ice caps are frozen or melted, whether or not it snows in North Dakota in July, whether or not we can grow food in Colombia in September. It determines all of those things, but even more than that, it determines great leaps in spiritual growth on this planet, because when the world changes, you and I have to change to accommodate that change. We've got to change our lives to accommodate whatever's happening on the earth. Well, that's what's happening right now. Why are all these things happening right now? What we found yesterday is that you and I, we're living the end of a 5,000-year-long cycle. If you're taking notes, it's actually 5,125 years. And it's interesting because this cycle happens to coincide with human history as we know it today. So these great cycles of time determine, in large part, what happens on our planet and how we respond. This 5,125-year-long world age is what it's called, happens to coincide. Everything we know is recorded human history happened in this cycle. Now, our belief systems and our science in the past, they believe this is all there was. They think that the beginning of human history was 5,000 years ago. But what the ancients said is that's just the beginning of this cycle. There was another cycle before that. And there was another cycle before that. And now our archaeologists are beginning to find the evidence that bears that out. Now, I mentioned this yesterday. I'm going to say it right now because this is why you and I are living such a rare, precious moment in the history of this planet. In the cycles of the past, when the world changes, people choose to respond to that change in one of two ways. If they see the world change and the things that are familiar disappearing, they will fight one another, violent competition, to try to keep everything as it was in the way that they're comfortable. And in the last cycle, 5,000 years ago, that is the way human civilization chose to respond. And the war was so bad that nobody won. And they were forgotten for 5,000 years until the archaeologists began to recover the remnants of their civilization. I talk about this in the new book. Something big is happening. We want to get it right. We want to do it well. There are other civilizations that work together. The cycle that we're living right now, this time of change, what the records show is that it is a very intense period of time, but it's brief. It will only last about this generation. It'll be over in a few years. And then the world will be as it is going to be for the next cycle. But we're the generation that bridges these two ways of being. What do you think the chances are of being on this planet at precisely the time when we end one way of being and begin the next? When we end a 5,125-year-long world age that happens to coincide with the end of another cycle that's about 26,000 years long, that happens to coincide with us crossing the equator that separates the top from the bottom of our Milky Way galaxy. All three cycles are converging right now. So if it feels like a special time in the history of this planet, it is. And these are the reasons why. This is what we did yesterday. We said that these world age changes, they bring changes in the planet, magnetic fields, climate, sea levels, and resources. And when those things change, cycles of war and peace are directly related to this. That's all the big stuff. It comes right down to our everyday lives, the way you and I feel about ourselves, our bodies, our relationship to the world, our relationship to one another. Political cycles, economic cycles, they're all linked to these global cycles. So the crash in the economy, if we knew how to read the cycles, it wouldn't have been a surprise to anyone. Those that know the cycles knew that crash was coming. They didn't know the magnitude, but they knew it was happening. And they knew it was happening the last time because it works in cycles. Our spiritual growth is linked to these cycles, and that's what I want to talk to you about today. The first of these is that when I was in school, when you were in school, if your kids are in school right now, the science classes are teaching them that the space between things is empty. That the space between you and me, that there's nothing there. When you look at the nucleus of an atom and that first electron, that the space in between is empty. It's flat out wrong. But we have an entire civilization based on the belief that everything's separate from everything else. And that what happens in one place has no effect on what happens somewhere else. We've built our lives that way. It's wrong. The second discovery, your inner experiences of thought, feeling, emotion, belief. Heart-based thought, feeling, emotion, and belief. Speak to the stuff that holds everything together. You communicate with the stuff that holds this world together. And it goes so far, we've even found that human emotion is so powerful that on 9/11, when the world watched the unfolding of what was happening in the United States on that day, our satellites, 222 miles above the surface of the earth, were picking up the changes in human heart fields of the magnetic fields of the earth and relaying that information back to scientists every 30 minutes. Scientists said, my God, we really are linked. We really are part of all that is. The satellites in space are picking up the magnetic fields of human hearts. So, I want to begin this morning. My man brain, when I hear things like this, I want to believe that we're all one. I want to believe that everybody's related. I want to believe that those fields are out there, but I need to see it. Because we've all been told that we're one, and we've all been told that we're related. And I've been in so many workshops, I know many of you have as well. People say that. How many workshops have you been in where you go in and the speaker says, you're a powerful being? And you write down, I'm a powerful being. And you know what I'm talking about. Then you are connected to all that is. Okay, I'm connected to all that is. You are one with all beings. You are one with all beings. Take a deep breath. Visualize yourself by a bubbling brook and feel that oneness. And then you get up and go to lunch. And how real is it? So the reason I'm doing what I'm doing, I'll just tell you a little bit. I was born a Cancerian male. Anybody know about Cancerians? Cancerians live in the world of emotion. Well, I'm a double Cancerian. And depending on how you run the charts, I've got 6 planets in the 12th house, and every one of them is in Cancer. So my world is about emotion. That's the only reason I'm saying that to you. And to tame that, my man brain had to learn a way to negotiate those emotions. And what I found for myself, and I think this works for a lot of people, is if we give our left brain, our logical brain, something to work with, once it is quelled and satisfied, it will step out of the way and let us move into our hearts. I work that way, and I think many of you probably do as well. So I'm going to honor the way that I believe we learn, our left brain, our right brain, our hearts. I wanted to see how real this field was. Well, your tax dollars are paying for a satellite. You've probably never even seen the results of what this satellite has found. So I want to share this a little bit with you. How many have heard of the Chandra X-ray Observatory? About 6 people. Your tax dollars are paying for this amazing piece of equipment orbiting the Earth called the Chandra X-ray Observatory. I would think that every one of you would have a beautiful hardbound book of all the Chandra images that have been captured over the years. Okay, now this is interesting because scientists believe that the space between things is empty. That's what's been taught. Look at the NASA mission statement for Chandra. To detect invisible fields of energy in, quote, empty space, unquote. So our own scientists are saying maybe it's not so empty. Maybe there's something up there. Okay, so here's what Chandra is doing. First of all, you all heard of the Hubble Space Telescope, right? Okay, this image is from the Hubble Space Telescope. Where these arrows are is the center of the universe, not the Milky Way, but the universe where scientists believe everything began with a Big Bang a long time ago. That's a male-oriented term. It was a male scientist that called the beginning of the entire universe the Big Bang. You know that. His name was Fred Hoyle. It was 1951. I know that because when I asked female scientists, what would you call the beginning of the entire universe? They say, well, we wouldn't call it the Big Bang. They said we'd call it something like the first dawn of the new breath, of the new beginning. But we got the guy out there in 51, and we're looking at the Big Bang, and it happened right here, okay? Okay, so this is what Hubble Space Telescope is seeing with the naked eye. This is what you could see if you had the vantage point of Hubble. There's no special equipment going on here. Okay? And what I'd like for you to see from this is see how these galaxies, they're a little fuzzy around the edges, but they're pretty much separate from one another, aren't they? I mean, this is separate from this is separate from this. Okay, now, the Chandra telescope is looking at the same place, but it's using special equipment that can see the, quote, empty space and the invisible fields. Now, don't blink because you're going to miss this. So the next image you see is what Chandra sees looking at the center of the universe and see if everything still looks separate from everything else. Isn't that beautiful? I remember when I first saw that, the first thing I thought of it felt to me like a web or a net, which is precisely the way the ancients described the field that holds everything together. The Hopi talk about spider grandmother weaving the web of creation. Or the Hindu traditions talk about the great god Indra wove her web in a faraway abode so that we could have this world. There's no empty space in the universe, and this applies down to the level of the atom. Everything in the atom is connected. We are all part of this massive, vibrating, pulsating, illuminating field of energy, and we're only learning about what it means for us to communicate with this field. Does it help to see that? You'll think about that a lot. It helped me to see it as well. Okay, NASA has another satellite your tax dollars are paying for called the COBE or COBE. It's pronounced both ways. COBE or COBE is imaging the radiation that's left over from the moment our universe began. So with the Big Bang, there was a release of energy, and there are remnants of that energy still out there. And the science are saying if we can map where that energy is, it gives us an idea of the shape of our universe. Okay, and they're looking at different wavelengths, it's like looking through different glasses, different lenses. Okay, so this is the first image you're going to see are all the wavelengths together. It's the composite wavelength, and this is what our universe looks like right now. This is the entire universe. It looks kind of cool. There's a lot we could talk about here. You know, there are many places in this program where one image we could talk about for the rest of the morning. And this is one of those places, but we're not going to because we're going somewhere. This is a cool image, and you see a little bit of a shape on here, but we're going to look at a different wavelength now. And if there are any numerologists, if you're a scientist or an engineer, this is the 53 gigahertz wavelength. But if you're not, and you don't care about that, if you're a numerologist, 5 and 3 is the number 8. It's God's number. So you can either say we're looking at 53 gigahertz or we're looking at God's number, and you said the same thing. So when we narrow down only to these wavelengths, this is the exact same image looking at only the wavelengths of God's number. And look at what this looks like. Does that look like any kind of a shape that you've ever studied in ancient healing traditions? Anything to do with balance, maybe? What does it look like? Exactly. Does it look like anything like that? I'm glad you said yes because I put that image there. If you said no, it wouldn't work at all. Exactly. Our entire universe, when we're looking at this wavelength, happens to assume exactly the pattern of energy that we equate with balance. Now, this is where it gets really, really interesting. Here's the universe in this state of balance that we've come to know. And the next image is where your homework comes in. Have you ever seen this before? What is that? That's the human brain. But it's not the human brain doing just any old thing. What's the human brain doing? It's healing. Our human brain in the state of healing assumes the same pattern of energy as the entire universe in the state of balance that's in right now. Don't ask me to say that twice. I don't even know where that came from. In other words, it's as if when we bring ourselves into alignment at the highest levels of creation, that alignment then filters down as above, so below. It's a fractal experience, a little experience in our bodies of what is happening in the greater universe. Isn't that beautiful? I've never seen this correlation before, and I almost took it out in the interest of time. And I felt like I just enjoy sharing it with you. I wanted to see it. Okay. So, it's the human brain while it is healing. So my question is, what is the brain responding to? What is the brain of that healer responding to? And this is what brings everything together. The brain is responding to a heart-based experience. You're going to begin seeing this. We're going to work with it. Our heart, we can intentionally, on demand, create a condition in our hearts that send a signal to our brain and align that healing state. The brain's just following the instructions. Our brain's sitting there saying, okay, I'm waiting for you to tell me. What is it you'd like for me to do? And that instruction's coming from our heart. We have grown up in a civilization, in a culture, in a society where we were taught the brain does everything. Because it's a male-oriented society, and men think with their brain, right? There's a whole workshop we could do on that. So what is the brain responding to? Well, the answer to that question is right here. Every moment of every day, there's a conversation between your heart and your brain. It's a two-way conversation. Your heart is sending a signal to your brain. Based on the quality of that signal, your brain is sending chemistry back into your body. The quality of that conversation is called coherence. So we're going to talk about coherence a little bit. You're going to hear this word a lot. If it sounds technical to you, pretty soon it won't, because you'll be so used to hearing it. It's just about a kind of balance. And the optimum coherence for you engineers out there, you can actually measure, is 0.10 cycles per second, 0.10 hertz. It's a very low frequency signal between our hearts and our brains. This is the same signal that communicates with the magnetic fields of the Earth that the satellites pick up. Okay? So, low coherence. When we are in a low coherent state, if you can measure respiration, heart rate, or pulse, it will give you an idea of the coherence between your heart and your brain. We're going to do it in here with someone in just a moment. So, respiration. When you see these rough, jagged, irregular readings, heart rate variability, HRV, could you see how they're irregular and rough? Pulse, transit time. These are all signs of low coherence. The conversation between the heart and the brain is this irregular signal, and it happens in the presence of what we would call negative emotions, frustration, anger, jealousy, hate, rage. You all know that. The flip side of that is that these negative emotions, the consequences, is the negative emotions create a lot of experiences in our bodies that we wouldn't necessarily want to have. Over 1,400 biochemical changes happen in your body when you get angry. When somebody cuts you off on the freeway in traffic, they're off having a great day because they made their exit. You're still reeling from the anger you're feeling because somebody just dishonored you on the freeway. You're triggering 1,400 biochemical changes that last throughout the day, bathing you in stress hormones like cortisol, heart rhythm chaos, cognitive shutdown. You don't perform very well. We don't solve problems well in this state, but you already know that. The flip side of that is in high coherence. Can you see how nice and even and regular these are? Appreciation, gratitude, love, compassion, all things that we would consider to be positive emotions. They facilitate really good biochemical changes. The studies are showing that you could have 3 minutes of high coherence and you will trigger a 100% increase in the DHEA levels of your body. That's the anti-aging hormone. That's the precursor to all the other hormones in your body that will last for 6 hours after that 3 minutes. We're going to do it in here today. We all look younger when you walk out of here today. Isn't that great? We'll all be 90 minutes older in time, but we will not have deteriorated in that 90 minutes. That's the key. Heart rhythm coherence is much improved in the presence of high coherence. So these are all the effects. Well, what does that mean? If our heart is so powerful, and it can do all these things, how come it seems like people die between about 70 and 100 years of age? You ever ask yourself that? I ask audiences all the time, why do we die? And first people laugh. They say, well, we die because of old age. Old age is not a disease. That is a catch-all for medical people who don't know what else to say when they're asked that question and they want to sound authoritative. There's nothing wrong with being 600 years old. As a matter of fact, the ancient Essenes said that you and I are living in bodies that should be here 900 years. I'm going to talk about this for just a minute. 900 years. Now, it sounds silly to us, to some. Would you ever want to live here 900 years? Why? Because of what our life has been like up to this point. Think how much you could get done in 900 years. You know, we think about a project in terms of 5 or 10 years. What could you get done in 100 years? Or I like to think of this. What would it mean if we were 900-year bodies and you look at another human in the eye and say, honey, I love you. Will you spend the rest of your life with me? 900 years. Some people say yeah, and some people say, God, no. All right, these are facts. Every cell in your body has the ability to reproduce and heal itself, bar none. Even cells that we were told could never do so. Brain cells now are documented as healing and reproducing themselves. Spinal cord tissue that we were told could not do these things. Heart tissue that we were told could not do these things. Every one of you have stem cells in your body right this minute. You don't need to get them from a newborn infant. They're with you from the moment you were born. They actually live right at the point behind your navel. And they're waiting. Your stem cells are waiting for you right now. They're waiting for you to send them the instruction so they can do what they came into this world to do. For some of you, they've been waiting a long time. For some of you, you talk to them every day. The language that allows us to access this is the language of the heart. People say, well, what about the DNA? We've heard that DNA can only replicate so many times and those little telomeres break off. They get brittle and they break off. They can, but you know what? Your body is so brilliant that you have an enzyme that repairs those if it's given the instruction to do it. There's no reason. Our hearts are such amazing, amazing organs. But the leading cause of death in adults in the Western world, age over 65, what do you think it is? So it's called heart disease. I began looking at it. I said, well, what is heart disease? I want to know what this is. I found that our heart beats about 100,000 times each day. Mine's beating harder right now because I'm working really hard for you all. Because I love you right now. I'm loving you right now. It's the best way I know how to love you in this room. Our heart pumps about 6 quarts of blood through 12,000 miles of arteries, vessels, and capillaries every 24 hours. I was trained as an engineer, and when you have a piece of equipment that the whole mission depends on, it's called mission critical. If that piece of equipment fails, everything stops. I would call our hearts mission critical. Would you agree? Okay, mission critical equipment, one of two things happen. It's so important when you build it, you either build the piece of equipment and then you build a backup in case it fails, then you build a backup to the backup, or you build the original piece so well that it simply cannot fail, or if it does, it can repair itself. We've only got one heart, so we don't have a backup or a backup to the backup. So that means this heart must be a really good heart that we've got. So, why would it suddenly stop after only 70 to 100 years? A gentleman named James Blumenthal, Duke University, did some studies. And what he found, high blood pressure, vascular plaque, stroke, those are the symptoms that we call heart disease. But what he found was that they actually result from what we call unreconciled long-term fear, frustration, anxiety, disappointment. This is published in the Journal of Consulting Clinical Psychology, Volume 67, 1999. So it's on your audio. And I looked at all these and I said, those are all symptoms of something else. What is it? What are they really telling us? What the studies found, and this is probably no surprise to you, but I know you're going to feel it the minute I say it. These are all symptoms that fall under the umbrella of hurt. Unreconciled hurt. So I had to ask myself, do we hurt ourselves into death in this world? Is it the hurt that we have from the loss of everything that we cherish, including a way of life that we've always known? Is that really what's happening here? Unresolved hurt. Well, I mentioned to you that the ancient Essenes talk to us about our beliefs. And what they say is this. They say that when our soul hurts from the pain of the things that we lose and are familiar in life, that our pain's transmitted into the body as the spiritual quality of the energy, of the life force that goes into every cell. But the same thing works in reverse. These are from the book, The Spontaneous Healing of Belief. At the back of the book, there are a series of belief codes. That was belief code 20. Belief code 21 says the same principles that allow us to hurt ourselves to death also work in reverse. They allow us to heal ourselves into life. And I mentioned that the ancient Essenes, they said that we literally have come to this world. There's no reason for us not to be here for 900 years. But I'm going to tell you, the next thing I say, you're going to laugh when you hear it, but then it'll make a lot of sense. They say that we're in 900-year bodies, but that the first 100 years are the toughest. I told you. They said the first 100 years are the most difficult, and here's the reason why. It's in the first 100 years of a human life that you and I will suffer the hurt and the loss of everything that we cherish. Everything that we know is true, everything that we've come to love and hold dear will leave us in that first 100 years. And what they say is that most humans simply cannot survive the learning curve. That our heart is such a magnificent, powerful organ that 70 to 100 years appears to be how long our heart can hold up to the stress and the pressure of that unresolved hurt before it simply gives out. But they say if you can find a way to be with the things that you love in this world, to be with the people and the experiences, the pets, the family, cherish every moment as the present moment. And when those things leave us for whatever reason, if we can find a way to redefine what that leaving means to us, that we have a whole new life in front of us. And this is what the ancients had learned to do. You and I are living at the end of a 5,125-year-long cycle. That's the end of a 25,625-year cycle that happens to be happening at the same time our planet is crossing over the galactic border. Everything that we have ever known and loved and cherished is changing. We're the generation that is bridging all that has ever been with what is yet to be, and we are learning to reconcile this in our lives. Whether we're talking about a planet or we're talking about our daily careers, our daily lives, the same thing. That's why this time is so precious and so special. Well, I think it even goes deeper than that. I suspect it even goes deeper. This is a Greggism. The Essenes don't say this. But you all have heard, and I have as well, that we come from a realm. We're not from around here. If you want to see an alien, look at the person next to you. Nobody's from around here. We're here for a while. We're loving each other. We're going to share some time together. But we come from a realm where we don't have these bodies, and we are in spirit, in family, linked as a unity, as a oneness. And I suspect that the original hurt that we feel from leaving that togetherness and coming into the isolation and the loneliness and the separation of a single human body is probably the hurt that we're all really dealing with. We might not talk about it at the water cooler on Monday morning after the football game at work, but I think that's probably what's happening. And we so long for that connection that we try to recreate that family in this world with partners and friends and siblings and pets and places and things to help us feel those things that we long to experience again. Do you think that's possible? First 100 years are the hardest. I'm on a 200-year plan. Who's going to be on the 200-year plan? Who do I get to see in this room 200 years from now? We'll make a date. Cool. Okay. All right. Stem cells, wake up. Okay, what we found yesterday is a human heart. How can the human heart have that effect? Here's how. Science are telling us the answer. Right here, the human heart has an electrical field that's about 100 times stronger than the one of the brain. Human heart has a magnetic field that is about 5,000 times stronger than the brain. This is why it's easier to feel your way into the solution, to feel your way into the healing, to feel your way into your heart's desire than to engineer it with your mind. There's sometimes it's good to engineer with our minds. If you're going to build a space shuttle and send some people to another world, you want good engineers and you want them to use their mind and you want them to have good sleep and have a really good day the day they do it. But if we're engineering life, this is quantum heart-based engineering. We're working with a different field here. All right, so coherence, 0.10 cycles per second. How in the world do we do something like that? Well, this is what I wanted to know. And as an engineer, I was trained to look in the world around me for the answers. In 1986, I had my first journey into the highlands of central China and Tibet, looking for the places that had been least disturbed by Western civilization, thinking that maybe there we would have a better idea. I would have a better sense of what we had lost. And if we could find the principles and then bridge them with the best science of today. This is the question I asked. I said, we're living a world that's changing so fast. And there's this judgment about either following the path of science or the path of spirituality. I said, what happens if we marry our two great ways of knowing? Marry the best of our spiritual traditions and the best of our science into a greater wisdom if it's going to help us. So in Tibet, it's an amazing, beautiful part of the world. It was in this monastery where we met this beautiful little monk. Now, I'm real close to the screen, and you all are on the edge. I don't even know if you can see this. Can you see that he's got a smile on his face? Can you see that? His cheeks are kind of puffed out right there. This beautiful little monk, there's a whole story I could tell you here. In the interest of time, I'm going to have to go fast. But it was this monk, I asked the question I ask every monk, every nun, every opportunity I had. I said, do you have a secret hidden library in this monastery? And after a lot of conversation and some camaraderie and some really bonding experiences together, it was this little monk that said yes. And my next question was, can I see it? I had a group with me. I said, can our group see this library? He said, yes. Wait right here. Well, time means nothing in Tibet. I'm going to tell you that right now. So this little monk, see these keys in his hand? He got on his bicycle and he rode 30 miles in one direction to another monastery to get those keys and 30 miles back while we wait right here. It was worth the wait because now he's taking us into this empty chanting hall. And if you've never seen one of these, they don't heat them in the winter. They're really cold. They say if you're cold, put on more blankets. So you can see the robes are so thick they stand up even when the monks leave. And we know that this is a false wall, and behind this wall there's a library. It's 3 stories tall, but it's only 12 feet wide, and it's dark. And they told us that we couldn't use our video cameras. So we went past these 30-foot tall Buddhas of compassion. Went past this hallway that had these beautiful prayer wheels that we rotated every one as we went past. And we're looking at the corner of the room. Okay, so these are the corners, 2 bookshelves, because these are Tibetan books. They've been here 1,500 years. They're loose pages sandwiched between the covers. And I asked my little monk, I said, what's in these books? This is one of those places we could spend the whole morning talking, and I'd love to do it. It's hard not to, actually. I said, what's in these books? And he said, I'd like for you to talk to somebody else to answer that question. So they took us to this monastery down the road to meet with the abbot of the monastery. The abbot is the elder of the monastery. They don't get a lot of company here, so this was a big deal. And all the monks at this particular place, even they don't get to see their abbot sometimes. So they were giving us a private audience. They put on their robes. They were leading us in a very solemn procession up to the place where we were going to meet with this abbot. I had never met this abbot before. I had met the previous abbot who had died unexpectedly. So we had to go through the formality of a greeting, and they told me, they said, whatever you do, don't look up, don't look into his eyes. Well, I had to peek. I consciously, I knew I wasn't going to, but it was an automatic thing. But it was okay. He smiled, and it was good. But then they let me ask him some questions. Okay, and I asked him, I was writing the book, The Divine Matrix, when this picture was taken. And I asked him the question, I said, in your tradition, what is the force that holds everything in the universe together? What connects everything? And he went off with a translator, and they had this whole conversation. I could have left that monastery, had a cup of yak butter tea, and come back by the time. They had this whole thing going on. And he came back, and he answered me with one word. I said, what is the force that connects everything in the universe? He said, compassion. And I said, well, wait a minute. Through the translator, I said, is compassion a feeling that we have in our bodies, or is it a force of nature that connects everything in the universe? And he went off and had a conversation with my translator. And he came back and answered me with one word. I thought it was a mistranslation. I asked him to do it again. He came back with the same word. Is compassion a feeling in our bodies or a force in the universe? He said, yes. This is a very deep, very powerful teaching. Because this beautiful man at 17,000 feet above sea level, halfway around the world in this old monastery, is telling us, as he has been taught in his tradition for centuries, that you and I are born with the ability to create an experience inside of our body, specifically in our heart, that literally, not metaphorically, literally attunes us to the very stuff that connects everything in this universe. And what we do with it after we get there is up to us. Well, about 5 years earlier, I had met this man. This was the previous abbot of the monastery. This is the man that mysteriously died. We don't know what happened to him. And this was the man that I had asked the first question to when I went there. Isn't he a beautiful man? I asked him, I don't know how old he is. They wouldn't tell us. I asked a number of times and they just giggled. Because time means nothing to Tibetans. So it was this man, I guess 600 maybe, I don't know. It was this man I asked the question. I said, when we see your prayers for 14, 16, 18 hours a day, when we see the mudras and the mantras and the bells and the bowls and the gongs and the chimes and the incense, and we see your prayers on the outside, I said, what are you doing on the inside? When we see a miraculous healing, how did you do that? This is the value of being with a living culture. If you walk into an Egyptian temple, you see some cool hieroglyphs that somebody made a long time ago, but those people are gone. We can't ask them. And we may not even know how to read those hieroglyphs correctly. But these are living cultures. And you can ask them again and again until either they answer you or they get tired of the conversation and kick you out of the monastery. I said, when we see your prayers on the outside, what's happening on the inside? And this is the man that told me, you've never seen our prayers. Because a prayer cannot be seen. He said, what you see are the things that we do to create the feeling in our bodies. He said, the feeling is the prayer. Feeling is the prayer. Then he asked how we do it in our culture. And I began to realize that when you and I lost this part of our biblical texts in the 4th century, 1700 years ago, the very books that were edited and removed from our spiritual traditions are the ones that tell us of the power of human emotion and heart-based experience to move this world, to heal our bodies, and to create that peace. And we know that because those texts are now being recovered in the Dead Sea Scrolls, in the Nag Hammadi libraries, and the Coptic libraries. Feeling is the prayer. Well, specifically the feelings of appreciation and gratitude. And this is where we're going to go with the whole thing. Appreciation and gratitude. When we experience heart-based feelings of appreciation and gratitude, that is how we create that heart-brain coherence. But your mom knew that. How many of you, when you were children, went to bed and your mom said, before you go to sleep every night, you give thanks for everything in your prayer? Remember that? Some of you? How many? Well, a lot of us may not have known exactly why we were being told to do this, but this is what gratitude and appreciation, in the English language, scientists have found that these two words best approximate the feeling in our heart that creates 0.10 hertz and floods our body with life-giving chemistry from gratitude and appreciation. The key is to feel from the heart as if the outcome already exists. Now, this is important. In the early 1980s, 200 people were trained to have the kind of feeling we're talking about. They were stationed throughout the war-torn areas of the Middle East during the Lebanese-Israeli War, the first Israeli-Lebanese War. And when they did what they were trained to do, all that happened was peace in a broad geographic area. Only 200 people. It's a potent language, a very potent language. What is common with all three? My friend David, those of you who were with me yesterday, the Native American prayer of rain. He didn't pray for rain to happen, because if you say, Great Spirit, please let there be rain, you've just acknowledged the rain's not there. You've just acknowledged the very condition that you're hoping to change. He felt the feeling as if the rain had already come. So please work with me on this. It's the difference between coming from the outcome rather than working toward the outcome. Does that make sense? How many saw the movie Ghost? Patrick Swayze, Demi Moore. Anybody see that movie? Wasn't that a great movie? Okay, what's your favorite scene in the whole movie? Just tell me. Everybody in every country and every audience will tell me the same scene. So just tell me right off. Which one was it? The Potter's Wheel. Wasn't that a hot scene? She's there. Her husband's gone. She's missing him. He's a ghost. He doesn't know how to be a ghost. She's working out her frustrations on a potter's wheel with a nice vase. It has nothing to do with this workshop, but I just have to acknowledge it right off the bat because it's everybody's favorite scene. But there's another scene that has a lot to do with this workshop. If you haven't seen the movie, I don't want to spoil it for you. There's another scene. Patrick Swayze's a ghost, and he's at a train station. Remember, he's at the train station, and he's on the subway. It's not the tarmac. I've been in airports so long. It's the platform. He was at the platform. He was at the platform of the subway. He's a ghost. There's a can lying on the ground, and as a mortal man, he liked to kick cans. He tried to kick this can, and his foot went right through it because he's a ghost. And the more he tried to kick it, this is his man brain saying, I'm going to make that can move. So he's scrunched up his face to get red. His veins are popping out. And he's trying harder and harder to do the same thing that didn't work the first time, thinking it's going to make a difference the next time he does it. And he's getting really frustrated, and the can's not going anywhere. And all of a sudden, another ghost comes by and says, hey, man, it doesn't work that way. Can't do it like that here anymore. He says, you got to feel it. And the minute he did that, the can was moving. He was moving it, kicking it all over the place. It's a perfect example. It's that subtle, that little shift of coming from the place where we feel that somehow we're going to make or impose our will upon the world, to the switch that comes from the place that our heart's desire has already happened. It simply has not been mirrored in the physical reality yet. That's how those healings happened. That's how the peace happened. Does that make sense? I see a furrowed eyebrow or two. It's a very different way for the Western mind to think. Remember the scientific experiment that's happening? We saw in journal Nature early in this program that said observation creates reality. Okay, what we now know is the way we feel, our expectations about our world literally are rearranging the stuff our world is made of on subtle levels if it's a passing expectation. But if we can hold that focus and be very clear about where and how it happens, that is where the miracles happen. That is how you bring change into your world. And we do it through a heart-based experience. And this is what I'd like to do in the time that we have remaining. I want to be very clear. I'm working closely, I have since 1991, with an organization called the Institute of Heart Math. HEARTMATH. How many here have heard of Heart Math? Quite a few? Okay, great. Good people. If you've never heard of them, they are a pioneering research organization that have come from many walks of life. They're medical doctors, authors, engineers, scientists, computer designers, medical technicians. They've left their respective careers at Stanford University, UCLA, private corporations, all come together to study the power of the human heart in ways that have never been explored before. If you haven't heard of them, you're going to a lot, and I'm going to share with you the reason why. There's a new initiative that the media is very excited about that allows all of us to participate in a heart-based experience to bring a transformational shift to the magnetic fields of this planet. Before we do that, let's have some experiences that are the kind that will contribute to that project, and then we'll talk about that a little bit. You okay if we do it that way? One of the things that HeartMath was able to establish in the early 90s is this image, and you've seen it a lot of magazines, articles, that there is a physical field. I mean, this isn't New Age metaphor. It's not the aura. It's not the prana. It's not the chakra. It might be linked to those. This is an electrical and a magnetic field that can be measured around the human heart that looks like a little donut called the torus. It's a tube torus that extends 5 to 8 feet beyond every human heart. We're all within 5 to 8 feet. Actually, we're pretty close in this room. That feeling in your heart stems from a new discovery that Earth and the magnetic fields of the Earth and the human heart work in the same frequencies. In other words, we're feeling those feelings, and our heart is 5,000 times stronger magnetically than our brain. What we're actually doing is we're communicating with the very fields that sustain life on Earth. This has led to this new project bringing millions of people together across cultural boundaries, religious, spiritual, international boundaries. Doesn't even matter what belief system, how you meditate or how you pray, bring everyone together to create coherence in a very precise way. It's led to a hypothesis that when many of us come together, strong collective emotion has a measurable impact. Our satellites are telling this on the fields of the Earth, a new project that is now called the Global Coherence Initiative. I'm going to talk just a minute about what it is, how you can participate if you choose. The goal is to unite millions of people from varied beliefs and cultures to shift global consciousness from instability and chaos into balance and cooperation by doing just the kinds of things that you are doing right now. The Institute of Heart Math is heading this up. It's a two-phase project. They are building hundreds of sensors, deploying them throughout the world to measure the fields that tell us about our hearts. And then they are training. Their goal is to have trained 100,000 people by the end of next month. We're about 2/3 of the way there right now. I'm excited about this project because it is the first time a science-based initiative has been embraced by the global media, and it's happening right now. It's happening right now at a time that the experts are telling us you and I are living a time unlike any other time of 5,000 years of recorded human history. The world is changing, the cycles are converging, and the very fields that sustain life on the earth, you and I are learning to communicate with those fields, commune with those fields, through our hearts, which we were born to do to begin with. Your heart is the one organ in your body that creates the strongest electrical, the strongest magnetic field, much stronger than your brain. And it's all coming together at the close of a great cycle as we end one world age and move into the next. What a beautiful, beautiful convergence of experience. Right now, we are posed on the precipice. We've got a choice. Where are we going? It's yet to be decided. You and I are making the choice right now. And the question is, what are we choosing? You now have the language with which to make that choice. And everything we've done in here is a context for everything that you will see in this conference, in your world, in your life beyond.